Abend. Für alle, die heute angekommen sind, willkommen zur 5. deutschen Scheibenwelt Convention. Der Abend beginnt heute mit einer kleinen Rede von Stephen Briggs, der uns von seiner Arbeit erzählen wird. Morgen findet am Nachmittag eine Frage- und Antwort-Session mit Stephen statt. Deshalb gibt es heute nicht die Möglichkeit, zwischendurch Fragen zu stellen. Nach dem Talk liest Stephen kurze Ausschnitte aus Real System, Gas, Going Postal und vielleicht noch ein Buch. Ein Talk. Und ganz viele andere Sachen, von denen er noch nicht weiß. And again in English, welcome to the 5th Lesung Convention. We're having a talk with Stephen Briggs. He is going to tell us about his work during the years. And since there's a question and answer session tomorrow, there will be no questions this evening. After the talk, he will comment on reading some disparate novel excerpts, more, Real System, Gas, and Going Postal. And I'm giving over to Stephen now.
Start with a bit of prepared German. Übrigens spreche ich kein Deutsch, nicht einmal Englisch spreche ich wirklich fließend. It means I don't speak German and barely fluent English. Right, I'm not used to just doing a talk, I'm used to doing open mic sessions. So I'll just talk until I run out of puff and then I might read for a bit. So I'll start by saying, I guess, how I got into this world and Terry Pratchett. I'm a member of an amateur drama group in England and have been so for many, many decades. And we had done a stage version of Monty Python's Life of Brian, and we'd done Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and then we ran out of Monty Python. They were quite keen on us doing some of their ripping yarns, but like the Python humour, it was mainly men. Like most amateur drama groups were at least half female, so they weren't going to be a start. So I then did 2 books by an English author called Tom Sharp, which have been published, have been televised, Blot on the Landscape and Blue. And we wanted to do Wilt, but at the time we wanted to do Wilt, Tom Sharp had just sold the rights to Channel 4 to do the movie version, which had Bruce Jones and Mel Smith in it. And they embargoed all of the 3 Wilt books, so we couldn't do any of them. So we looked around for somebody else to do it. And I wrote to Douglas Adams to ask him to do The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I wanted to do for quite a long time. But he had just sold the rights to Disney. So I wrote to Disney and asked if we could do an adaptation of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Our theatre seats 90 people at capacity who are going to do 4 performances. So do the math, 360 people are going to see the show, maximum. Disney told me it wasn't their policy to allow anything to be done with anything they held the rights on. I go back to Disney, this is pre-email, this is actual letters going backwards and forwards across the Atlantic. I wrote back to Disney and pointed out that nobody was not going to go and see Disney's film of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because they had seen our stage adaptation on a stage not much bigger than the one I'm standing on now. They came back and said it wasn't their policy. So we left it alone for a while, kept looking around. wrote back again, pointed out that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was getting past its sell-by date, and it's quite 1980s style. We were moving on into the 90s. It was starting to get a bit creepy. And as you know, they didn't make the film until the 2000s. They made it really badly when they did make it, so sucks to them. But Dr. Allen was a charming man, but nothing he could do for us if he'd sold the rights. Thank you for that. That's me. It's already wet. Why is it already wet? So we were puzzling over what we might do when someone in the drama group said, try reading one of those Terry Pratchett novels. I think you'll like his humour. So I was working in Reading at the time, it was about 29 miles away from where I lived. I went into the bookshop there at the railway station, and there were these Pratchett books. And I picked Mort out because nothing about fantasy novels. I didn't like the covers, but Mort seemed to me to have the least garish cover. This was very lucky because Mort is really the first book where Terry's Discworld is a world in itself and not a parody of fantasy. Eagle Wright, that comes just before it, is just on the verge of becoming Discworld. By the time he gets to Mort, he is just writing. He's comfy in his own world. It's his Discworld, and he knows where he is. And I just liked the whole thing about death being a person who finds the whole business really complicated and people really complicated. Loved it. Went on to read all the books he'd actually published at that point in paperback, took out his guards, and then wrote to him and said, might there be a chance of staging one of your books, Mr. Pratchett? Now, fortunately for me, nobody had ever done this before. And writers, as you might expect, only think of their books as books. They don't think of them as films, they don't think of them as TV series, they write them as books. So when somebody comes along and suggests doing something different with one of their books, they're quite intrigued by the idea. It's slightly flattering. I was also, because I was writing from the world of Andran, writing from outside the genre that Terry wrote in. So it was somebody who wasn't a fantasy and sci-fi fan, showing an interest in his books and wanted to do something with it. So he just said, yeah, go for it. That was great. When we staged all the other things, none of the originators had ever turned up to them. Tom Sharp doesn't like travelling and doesn't like heights. Didn't get that. And wouldn't come to Oxford to see the play. It was just not the thing he did. The Pythons were all far too busy to come to any of it. Terry then, when he got back home, there was a phone message saying, oh, Terry Pratchett said, bring it whenever you get back. This was after letter I'd been to the theatre I'd been rehearsing. Rang to him and said, I thought I might come to see your play. He said, well, I'd pop along on the first night and see how it goes. I said, it would be better, really, if you could go on the Saturday, because on the first night, the cast are going to be quite jumpy, having you in the audience. On the first night, it would be nice. Also, I have to say, we sold very few tickets by this point, and I thought, I can't be turning up. Empty theatre. Thinking, what the hell have I done? We hadn't sold many for Saturday. But, so he said, yes, he did. But luckily for us, this is all pre-internet, practically the word around Pratchett fandom doing this book, it did actually start to sell. And by Saturday night, it had actually sold out. So when Terry came, it was full. And during the course of correspondence, the occasional exchange of facts, which was state-of-the-art communication back then in the 1990s. For you young people, it was a way of sending paper to a phone line. So at the other end, a piece of paper came out, and you could read it. Brilliant. Terry had mentioned that he was doing a film of Mort. He signed the waiver rights. He sent me a copy disk with the software that the film company had used for writing the screenplay, in case it would be helpful to me doing Weird Sisters. And so I thought, oh, because I've written death out of Weird Sisters, because, like I said, it was an unknown thing, Terry. He was well known amongst science fiction and fantasy readers, but author of a series of well-known fantasy novels, and that was always very described. We were doing a play. People that went to the theatre are not commonly fantasy readers. So we were selling Terry to a new audience. And, as luck would have it, we had to move theatres. We weren't in the theatre we used to play again, where we had an audience we knew. We moved 5 miles down the road, which in the United Kingdom is a fair old distance, to this small market town. So it was all new. And then Terry didn't want to see it, and it was great, and it worked. And I said to him, I'm really sorry to hear that you're doing a film of Mort, because I'd like to have done Mort. We didn't put Death in with Sisters, because we weren't sure we'd get the money out of the audience sales to pay for a death costume for a guy that turns up for one scene at the end. So I'd like to have done it right. He said, well, what difference is it going to make? No, exactly. And as you know, there never has been a film of Mort yet, and there isn't even one within vision. And 25 years have gone by. So next year we did Mort. And while I was writing Mort and rehearsing Mort, I went into the bookshop in Reading again. And at the time, I was reading some Alice Peters novels. She gets as far as Germany, but she writes about a monk in medieval England called Cadfael. And on the shelves was a Cadfael companion, which told you about the characters of the book, and also the real-life people and real-life history surrounding the Cadfael setting. One of my colleagues at work was reading the Middle-earth companion, similar thing to Tolkien. And so I dropped a little fact to Terry saying, oh, here's an idea for you, a free one, provided. Why don't you have a companion to your Discworld series? You know, about 12 novels by then. I think because Tolkien's got one, Dickens has got one, Alice Peters has got one. And I'd sent it, fax went, seconds later the phone rang. So he goes, are you saying you want to write this? No idea what's involved in indexing a series. Yes, it's a good idea, he said. Not a new idea, he said. We've been thinking about it for a long time. I, Terry, haven't got time to write it. So who do I give it to? If I give it to a professional indexer, they'll do an absolutely accurate job, which will be as dull as ditchwater. So I, Terry Pratchett, will then have to spend months turning it into something which is actually marketable. Or do I give it to a couple of fans who are quite keen, but they'll want to put their own spin on it, because they'll be failed writers and will want to add their own element to it. Or do I give it to some guy who knows nothing about fantasy, but likes to make books? And I said, all right, yeah. I'll think about it, let me know. So I went out of my office down the road to University Bookshop in Reading and bought anything they got, which was a Cambridge University Press pamphlet on indexing. I looked at it and thought, yeah, it looks tedious but doable. I went back to the phone, rang him and said, yeah, I'm going to go. He said, it's not a question of giving it a go. He said, this is the one chance it gets. If you get it wrong, it's dead forever. Right, I'll do it. I went home and I bought card indexes, cards. The little thing from Cambridge University Press told me there are two ways of indexing. Card indexes and a computer system. This is 1992. Wisely, I chose a card index, which, as those who've seen the documentary have seen, is as accessible to me now as it was the day I wrote it. As anyone knows, any card indexing system I bought in 1992 would not have made it with all the various changes that have happened with software since then. I'd be stuck. So I started, but then, this is a big job of work. You take all 12, or 13, or 14, we keep writing new ones at the end, books, and you have to write everything down about every person, place, thing, as you go. Slow and stodgy, but good. Unfortunately for me, Terry then said, what I want to start with is mapping the city. This sounds fun. What it means is indexing all those books, but only writing down the stuff relating to the map of Ankh-Morpork, knowing that at some point, quite soon in the future, you're going to have to go back into the whole thing again write down everything else that we didn't write on the first time. So I did that, and we started mapping the city. And I assumed that a good starting point would be to find a largish British city with a partially extant wall and a river that could be the starting point for Ankh-Morpork. Like me, I have still got the map of the first one, and I cannot remember which city it was. It's not a thing I recognise, but I know it was one. But it became very clear very soon that what we were going to do. We had to start from the very beginning and build the whole thing from brownfield side upwards, which we did. And Terry was writing Men at Arms, and he'd just done a little piece where Harris is walking angler around the city, and I think some thief runs off, and Carrot goes in pursuit, but he catches him by ducking down some little side alley that nobody else knows about. So he just steps out in front of him, his fist out, and the guy stopped dead. Terry had written that bit. We mapped that little bit, and that was the start of Ankh-Morpork. So a large circle, we didn't map this circular. Terry had no map in his mind at all, genuinely no map. He knew he wanted it roughly circular because he saw it as a cut under it. He said, we plot that little down, which I think around 7th Street. Then tried to put the rest of the stuff in. And I learned a lot over that period about how cities work, because I started by putting it back. Before I got that book, I recognised that Terry was a fantasy writer and I was a fantasy reader. I didn't know anything about fantasy cities. I knew what I thought Ankh-Morpork looked like, but he still wanted to map it. I didn't know what he thought Ankh-Morpork looked like. So I did a sketch, which I still got, which I sent him by fax, saying, this is how I think Ankh-Morpork looks. Is that right? Luckily for me, it was. You want the buildings close together, but it was. We were both thinking about something between the set of Oliver and the set of Shakespeare in Love. Written at that time, that kind of whole Elizabethan Dickensian look. But we were there for that. Back where we were. I started plotting all the posh buildings in Ankh-Morpork in Morpork. Posh buildings go in the posh part of the city, and all the peasants live in the scruffy part of the city. Terry said, that's not how cities work. Terry said, if you walk 2 blocks away from the White House, you're in slums. He said, what happens is you build a big posh building, and the peasants come to work for you, and they live in little huts near to where you are, so they can get to it early in the morning. So, all of the guilds, Bishop's Palace, University itself, can all be in Morpork, because that's how it works. You'll see very few of them are actually in the posh side of the city. So from that we started placing them. What was surprising was that, given that Terry genuinely had no map in his head, and he had written 12 books, how consistent it was. There are about 3 places where I had to stretch the city to make it fit the plot, where arrows have to travel a certain distance to hit weather vanes, or where somebody has to walk a certain distance at this time. With very few exceptions, everything fitted. Maps all out to pages backwards and forwards. In the day before computers, it meant me drawing a map. The map was about that big. There was a photocopy company in Dresden, run by Xerox, which could do A0 photocopies. So I would adjust the map, take 2 photocopies, post one on the tube to Terry. When he got it, he then made what's wrong with it. He then paste Tipex over it, correct it, photocopy it again, send it back through, and then fix through until we got to the final version. A slow process, a laborious process, but quite fun in its own way. We reached the point where we got the final map. Decided to turn it round slightly so that it went down rather than across, because we recognised it looked like opening credits for EastEnders, but therefore looked like London. But that's unavoidable. It's a big city which has a wavy river going through it. And we have a Oxbow Lake in London, doesn't it? You know, it looks a bit like that. And we thought, anyway, moving it around to make the river go through vertically makes it look like an elementary canal, which we thought was more appropriate, but stuff comes through Ankh-Morpork and then just adding a certain thing. Then Terry said, the trouble with it is, he said, it looks like it's been designed by 2 blokes. He said, it's supposed to have grown over centuries. He said, let's move Short Street from about 12 o'clock where it was to about 10 o'clock on the map. God. This is cutting a swathe through these carefully balanced distances, where people move from and to, where the buildings are, cutting it through the middle of this and that. We did it. I did it. We did it. I did it. And it worked. And that was all fine. Finished it off, sent it off to the publishers, but then sent off the artist who would do the final colour version that would be the one that get published. Terry, at that point, went off to do a signing tour in Australia and New Zealand and combined with a holiday. In those days, pre-internet, when somebody went swanning off to Australia and New Zealand, there was virtually no way of contacting them. They didn't have mobile phones. You could just ring them and say, "Hey, Terry, we've got a problem with this." He was just out of contact. The publishers at this point send me the proof of Stephen Briggs' artwork for the map. Now, I'd drawn the map, let's say, this big, and it filled the page from edge to edge, which is more or less the way I expected it to look. When it turned out from Stephen Briggs, it was this big, with a huge border around it. And I thought we were publishing a map of Ankh-Morpork. What this is a piece of artwork with a map in the middle of it, and it's not what I thought we were going for. And they said, well, that's the way it's been done. And I said, well, sure, photographically you can crop it, cut it, rephotograph it, and just make the map bigger. If you say we've got to do it, we'll have to get Stephen to redo the whole thing. And there was no way of contacting Terry. This goes wrong, this is a disaster. So I said, it's not like it's got to be redone. We did redraw the whole thing. We found it's still not where I wanted to be. But when Terry got back to New Zealand, I was writing I still have the photograph they sent me of the tiny version of the map. I use it sometime against them. It worked, it went out, and much rather like it was the first book ever to get onto the UK bestsellers list. And Ellen took a panic. Trudged through all of that. Well, I say we, I trudged through all of that. And then Terry Springs, the very first one at the end, made it funny. I had, towards the end of the process, I had 2 days around Terry's house, which we call Pratchett Towers. It's not called Pratchett Towers, it's what we call it, but we call it Pratchett Towers because it's a big house that Terry lived in. I had Pratchett Towers for a couple of days. The first day, we were sat side by side working through this map. We regretted it, I mean. Heavy stuff, it was intense stuff, but we broke at lunchtime, we go to the pub, lunch, and in the evening we broke again to go to the pub, and then got back and then some bizarre drinks about pour port out. Where you got port from, a port drinker, other alliance, it turns out. The next day, day 2 of the work alongside Terry, I had a month of all hangovers. I feel like death pulled up, I know I've got a whole day. This isn't next to this famous wine who's bouncing around to get the companion finished off. I think he knew, he was quite astute, that I was heavily hungover for being as bright as a button. I was waiting through it. After that, stuff just went on. Things happened. The publishers were quite keen because it saw the map that worked, the companion that worked, they wanted another map. That's all good fun. I learned all about plate tectonics and all that kind of stuff, about where rain shadows should be and should not be. I put them on the wrong side. I had the great net in the wettest place on the disc. I learned about how rivers are supposed to work. I got that wrong too. Named lots of countries, put things on the map he didn't want there. I put extra islands on. He said, I don't really need those. So I wanted them, I used them around. He wasn't really into having stuff just there so he could just use it if you find brand new ideas. As you probably know, a lot of people said that mapping his city would restrict what you could do with it. You know, limit what you could do. Terry said there have been hundreds of films and books written set in London or New York, and people have not felt it necessary to add bits, new streets, new buildings. They just set where it is. I think he actually found that having the place mapped helped to focus the story writing because you were writing in a real place then. where he went to. He knew how he would get to A from A to B, and it just helped him to sort of focus on the fact it was a real place, which although we didn't do, it wasn't real. But we had discussions over the phone about, if you were to be going from there to there, and you want to take a shortcut, where would you go? And I'd go down there. Yeah, that's what I thought. But as you know, part of Terry's makes his work special is his fantasy world is a working world. It has everything in it that the real worlds do. It has sewers, it has waste disposal, it has food coming into the city and food going out of the city after being processed. All of that is part of Terry's city. It has to work that way to be Ankh-Morpork. It's not sort of just glass and shiny and full of unicorns. And after that, we went on, we did diaries, but lots of stuff, and lots of plays, which used to come and see. The fact Terry is always very, very, very honest. He doesn't like things he tells you, which is quite a good thing, because if any of you do Amdram, you know that at the end of the play, it was just how wonderful it was. Very few people come out to the pub again. Yeah, it wasn't dramatic 3 or you know. Maybe I thought you were crap actually, but just didn't answer good. Terry comes in and goes, that was awful. Or who the hell was that person there? What were they doing? Why did you cast them? But he liked them because it was, I should say, for him it was interesting to see them lifted off the page, even by amateurs, and done live for them. And it's always been great for us, my drama group, that even now with movies, with the plays being done all over the world, in Germany, that we were the first ones ever to drama arts Terry Pratchett. That can never be taken away. I was the first person ever to play Death, first person to play All This, first person in the world to play Duke Felbert in Beer Sisters. Put on my gravestone. Then it was time to slow down. When Terry's Alzheimer's kicked in, the need to focus on the actual books and not on doing spin-offs, because he just hadn't got the time, hadn't got the brain energy to do it. I mean, the year before it happened, but we could never have done the math with Terry at any point in the Alzheimer's journey, because the Terry pre-Alzheimer's would be holding 10, 12 more books in his head at the same time. When writing a book, he had bits of it parked all over his mind, but he knew where they all were, and could pull them back in, pull bits off, pull bits from other books in. Like Sherlock Holmes, then we come back. He talked about the Mind Palace. It's also in Hannibal. And that's really how I sort of think of Terry's mind. It was a big house full of rooms with all bits of plot in it. And when Alzheimer's kicks in, you lose the map to the house. So you no longer find the bits of plot that you put them down. And once we were talking about a computer game he was playing, and it wasn't a shoot to kill thing about building worlds and travelling around. And he said that a couple of days where he'd gone into some cave, and as he was going in, he left a character at certain points in the cave, so that when he forgot the way out again, there would be a gaming character to ask the way out. The early stage of Alzheimer's when he was aware of the problems and how to sort them out. So it was quite intriguing for him, but it meant that, as that got worse, book writing got more complicated, and he didn't have spare time to do spin-off stuff. Which is all very sad. Such an English book, how would that take? How would then? Then ask the question, because Jens is coming on. What else can I tell you? Let's look at. Give me a topic. This isn't a question, I'm just asking for him.
Can I just throw in a slight extension to something you said about Ankh-Morpork being a real city? It's the only fantasy city that has a sulky factory. And that fact has been used at international meetings of the British Association of Sexual Health and HIV.
That's it. There's a lot of good stuff coming out of it. But of course, out of Discord itself, of course, get Terry's support for orangutans and all this sort of fluky. I don't think he intended. I don't think he was interested in orangutans specifically at the time he made the librarian orangutan. I think that was a happenstance, but then it sort of grew into a close link between him and the Orangutan Foundation, and him and orangutans. Did 3 trips to Borneo. Again, I was very unlucky. I nearly got to go on the first one. I got rung by him. And in those days, before Terry had Rob, if Terry went anywhere, he either went on his own, or he went with somebody from the publishers, usually some junior official of the publishers who would just be there to make sure the chair and put water and things like that. And he sort of mentioned to the BBC whether perhaps they could take me along to Indonesia to go with him and chat with him, but the BBC thought it was just a waste of money, so I didn't get to go. So they can think on that, thinking their expense. But life's made up for these little missed opportunities. It's like the companion, when I said, that he said, it's got to be done right or it fails. And you sort of realise it's one of those watershed, transitive time moments where you either say yes, and that's it, or you say no, and that's just it, gone forever. So saying yes was, well, I wouldn't be here if I said yes. All the dull stuff I've done with this book, I would say yes, that would be a shame. It wouldn't have worked out closer with Terry, it was good fun, 98% of the time. It could be quite crappy, it was a guy who didn't tolerate fools. He was remotely glad of it. I was lucky. I only started off with Terry twice. Both times actually based in Germany. We came to see a play near Leverkusen many years ago. Terry rang up. He'd asked Terry to go, and he rang me at work and said, "Yeah, do you fancy going to Germany for a day? Go and see a play, fly back next morning." I told them, as long as they put my beer and rub first, we'll do it. I said, "Good for you." So he said, "I'll get the flights. You can drive us here." So I did that. To try and make it what I thought was seamless as possible. Little pickup service where you just dump the car and the guy comes and drives off to the park. So it would be easier, smoother than Pratchett. We got back from Germany to Heathrow. I went to long exit from Heathrow. We stood for about 20 minutes at departures, no, arrivals, which should have been departures, the place where they bring the car around. Don't forget, it was at departures. We were at arrivals. Yeah, I rang when we came out to Heathrow. He was a bit peeved because I had hold baggage. Terry's a very light traveller. Always gets me into a sort of handbag. But I'm an idiot taking a suitcase. So we had to wait for it to go through all that. Then I went, he said, "Well, where's that ticket for that? Especially bloody arrivals," he said. Not to happen now. And then about a year later, they invited us to go and see another one of their plays. And then we had Robert this time. And Robert and I said, "Oh, Terry says something tonight." He says, "Where did you land?" And I said, "I can't remember where I was." So I said, "Oh, Frankfurt." So they booked 2 flights. And then I looked back and I thought, I've got to Düsseldorf. So I rang the people from the play and said, "How far is it from Frankfurt to Düsseldorf?" He was driving us to the, it's a long way, you tell me. And I had to ring Robert and say, "I'm in the wrong airport, Rob." "Oh, right. Terry says you're a fucking idiot." And he'll book new tickets. But he was actually fine with that. Money meant nothing to us. I'm not sure actually money would mean nothing. But yes, those are my 2 sums with Terry. Nothing big. Other people have done much worse than that. Plays, Terry, theme crabbing.
Audiobooks.
That's a question.
No, it's not a question.
Thank you. There you go. I will talk about them again. I often say, and I have done in booking trips, that I got into this book by accident, which I did. As you gathered, I wrote asking if we could do a play. I had no real ambitions at that point to do a second one. I just thought we'd do a play, and then possibly the Tom Sharp would be available and we would move on. I had no intention of getting involved, obviously, with busy. ISIS don't pay very much for audiobooks because they don't sell large numbers. At the time they were doing this, ISIS's main customers were libraries and charities for the blind and blind people. Audiobook listening wasn't as popular then as it now is, and they didn't sell many of their books. The ones that they did sell were the discount ones. They knew those actually sold, people would actually buy them. But they're not big money, so they don't pay much. So Nigel reached a point where he was quite busy, and he basically said to them, look, I've got lots of on, it's not actually worth my while driving from London to Oxford to record these books for 60 quid. So they were looking around for a new reader. And at the same time, ISIS was looking to try and make sure that Discworld fans were aware of their recordings so they could sell more to more Discworld fans. At the same time, Bernard had just emerged from an awful situation with Terry, where he'd been ripping him off for years. Well, things had been ripped off on Bernard's behalf. Terry had him ripped off, and Terry was not happy with Clarecraft. But he was back on the upstep again, because Terry recognised it wasn't Bernard's fault, he was much bigger than Terry was. It was just the beginning, was that Bernard was keen to get Clarecraft more publicity. At the same time, I was doing tiny bits of merchandising which Terry got me into, again by accident. When we finished the companion, he said, wouldn't it be a laugh to have a university scarf for once in university, to commemorate the companion? In the United Kingdom, university scarves have sort of longitudinal stripes in different colours for the university, and often a badge embroidered at one end. He said, you can have one, I'll have one, we'll get one for publishers and one for college, of course, his agent. And so I rang a company that makes most of the university scarves, and as it happened, also made the scarves for Tom Baker. And they said, yeah, sure, we can do that. You can do that. That's what colours you want. Doesn't make any difference how many colours you have. It doesn't make any difference if you order 1 or 500. The price is blah per one. The only separate cost is the jacquard for the embroidery. So we got something done. And then Terry said, I think Terry mentioned it on Pratchett, which for young people was like a fax version of Facebook. We could exchange information. No, not exchange information. You could say things and they'd be ignored completely, like Facebook. Somebody else would just trample over your idea and do it. So he popped on this idea about scarf, and everyone said, oh, I got one of those. And it started from there. Again, no intention to do it, but I was saying these bits of merchandise. It was useful for fans to know about it. So Bernard, me, ISIS, all wanted to get fans to know about what they're doing. And the ISIS guy went to see Bernard to talk about how they might support it. And during the course of that meeting, he said, oh, a bit of a bucket Bernard. He said, Nigel Kleine is packing up on us, we're looking for a new reader for the audiobooks. And Bernard said, yeah, give Briggs a call. He's a bit of a thespian. He'll give it a go for you. So he did ring me and say, would you be interested? And I said, yeah. I actually quite like reading books that way. And so I went on audition and got that. That was all just by accident too, as was the American ones, because they just rang up, luckily for me, after I'd done about 2 of the books, and sent to somebody who does the unabridged books in the United Kingdom. 6 months earlier, it would have been Nigel Kleine. So it was me. They just said, Stephen Briggs, they just rang up and said, would you do it? So I got the American ones as well. So for each audiobook, I used to record them twice, once for the Americans and once for the British one, because there are slight grammatical differences between English, American English, which both publishers were quite anal about. The Americans wouldn't tolerate English grammar, and obviously, expect the English folks wouldn't have any talk. So most of the books I recorded twice during the course of usually about 3 days, sometimes 4. And then Terry used to listen to them while there was an improved stage, so I'd hear his comments on them before they actually went out. Again, luckily, reasonably positive, but nothing to do much when he said, don't like that voice or anything else, might mispronounce that word. There'd be words in there which I didn't know and which the publisher at ISIS didn't know. Like, I'm not sure if it's mandala or mandala, but when he got to mandala, even I think at the time, people who work in the audio industry think 10 o'clock in the morning is the crack of dawn. I would try and push them earlier because I was used to getting up very early. I think 9:30 was as early as I could get them. And then, luckily for me, after about 7 or 8 books, they found a studio in Oxford, less than a quarter of an hour from where I live. But the same thing, 9:30 was as early as they get up. I found them far too relaxed. Audio people start work at 10, work for about an hour and a half an hour tea break, work for about an hour, 1 hour for lunch, work for about an hour, half-hour tea break, and then work till about 4:30, 5 o'clock. I don't like that kind of thing. I'd rather get on with it. I come from a UK civil service, which by that time was overstressed, so I was used to getting in at 7 o'clock in the morning and not stopping until about 7 o'clock at night. Because we didn't have tea breaks, we didn't have lunch, lunches for wimps. So I did stop for a half an hour to eat a sandwich, which I'd eaten in about 10 minutes. Just something been a waste of useful time. But the recording process was good fun, and at least they had air conditioning in the American ones. The UK ones, the studio wasn't air conditioning like this, under these heat lamps, which didn't concentrate. We were very hot, trying to focus on the book. Thank you for your protest. That wasn't a question, that was just a plays. Terry liked the plays that I did, most of them. He didn't like all of them. There were none he didn't like. He wasn't very keen on one of them, but he grew to appreciate it more after the National Theatre had done Nation, which he loathed. They changed its plot, they changed the character's motivation, they added characters, they moved actions around from character to character. They had some bizarre man dressed as a parrot. It was a weird concoction. And given that this is one of those books that Terry was very fond of, a book he was very close to, it really been the wrong book to take liberties with. Very, very unhappy with that. As a result, luckily for me, it was about that time, it was one of the ones I'd done, that he became much more pragmatic about what I did to his books occasionally. But although he recognises that to do a 2-hour play from a very long book, something's got to go. As an author, what he would lose and not what I would lose. Didn't have any understanding of what works in the theatre. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he thought was important in the books. And it might not necessarily be important in that book, but it's going to be important in the book after it. But that's not important at all in the play. Somebody comes to see Masquerade. They don't need to know that 10 books down the line, Terry might use Agnes Nidd again and he wants to do the scene because that helped her character progression, not part of his idea. He was, I wouldn't say we argued. I would say I thought what I was doing was right, and he'd tell me I was wrong and I had to change it. That was his Discworld. That was the strength of Discworld at the Terry, was that it was his Discworld. Terry held the golden ring of Discworld, and nothing happened on Discworld without Terry's specific say-so. And that was a good thing, because Terry didn't believe in what was the code with Discworld characters on. He didn't believe in cheap spin-offs. He thought, if you're going to do merchandise, it had to be Discworld. You want that kind of quality, and he wasn't bothered about the money. This was probably the strength of it. That he could afford to reject things that offered him lots of money if it wasn't what he wanted, which is why there weren't any film versions. Terry would have very specific views about what he wanted to do, and he wanted them to be right, his versions. Now, film companies, don't work that way. They think they buy the rights to your book, and then they can do what they like with it because it's theirs. And Terry didn't need £10 million, whatever he was being offered, he could afford to say no. A few times, two quite senior film directors, he has said more or less that much. This is crap, no, it's not happening. And that's why there hasn't been a film version, because Hollywood and others found Terry too prickly to deal with, because they weren't prepared to have him sat on the set commenting more than he were. whole shower scene in Oppenheimer. What on earth is that doing in there? It adds nothing to the plot. And the people you're trying to get into Terry Pratchett, they must think, what the hell? I want to start with Oppenheimer today as well, because I didn't want to get the idea across. There's a lot of stuff in there which is embedded in the whole series, and you're jumping in halfway down. But it was too bloody. Talking maybe a year later, at Terry's 60th, when he had Scheibenwelt playing, that tent in that field. I was talking to Vadim Jean, the guy who directed and wrote Oppenheimer, and I think the next one, you read that. And he was asking me how I went about adapting the books to the stage. And I said, what I do is I read the book, I put it down and read it for about a week. And after a week, I jot down the key plot points that I think will be in the play. By and large, what you can't remember isn't important because there's a relative. And then you hack through it. And when the play turned out to be 4 hours long, you have to take 2 hours of stuff out of it. You just do by using characters, using whole scenes, sometimes using an entire plot line. Vadim explained that he viewed adapting a Terry Pratchett book as taking Michelangelo's David and trying to make it fit through a slightly smaller hole than it would fit through. So he just chipped tiny little pieces off. He didn't want to ruin the original masterwork. That's where he just goes off. Left too much stuff in. Wasn't prepared to go. No, it's just got to go. It's nice, but it's really get the groove to make it fit. But I like that. And I liked in broad terms the 3 movies they did. They all had good stuff in them, in their own way. I thought David Jason worked better as his script than I thought was humanly possible, given the random casting of it. And it did what I would have done with, and later on did do with Cover of Magic and Light Fantastic, which is to make one film out of the book, 2 books. Because the whole purpose, dramatically, of Cover of Magic is just to bring Rincewind and Two Flower together. That is all the book's about. Everything else is irrelevant. Just cut it off that bit, and did. And then move straight to Light Fantastic, where the plot is. More or less what Rob did. And it's what I did with it. So they felt that. And then, of course, it's about getting rid of good people. And I think going most of my favourite because they had Charles Dance, who was really good. And David Suchet, who at that time I'd not seen doing anything quite as good as that since Blot in the Landscape. He played Blot. Before he was famous for it, but seeing him with Beach Hill was good fun. I've seen his funny side before. And he did it really well. He did an awful lot with little budget, and did it with a lot of soul and heart. And he did it, as I say, liking having Terry around to comment, chip in, and what's good. He wrote bits. He wrote bits of dialogue for Jeremy Irons. As soon as he heard Jeremy Irons being veterinary in Cover Magic, he wrote an extra little scene. He knew how he wanted it delivered by Jeremy Irons, the way Jeremy Irons spoke. He didn't even need the money, I saw it on his name. Right, now I'm going to read because I've run out of things to say. People sometimes ask me who my favourite actors are to read the audiobooks, and they rather assume that I'm going to say Paul Veterinari. Because I paid him a lot, paid him a lot. I paid him a lot when there's no money in it. I only afford the veterinary. But in fact, I find the veterinary quite boring. It's not terribly dramatic, and it's difficult to make his voice sound different enough to be. However, the one little bit I quite like the veterinary, I didn't get to report, it's in Guards. steepled his hands and looked at Vimes over the top. "Let me give you some advice, Captain," he said. "Yes, sir. It may help you make some sense of the world. Sir, I believe you find life such a problem because you think there are good people and bad people. You're wrong, of course. There are, always and only, the bad people. But some of them are on opposite sides." He waved his hand towards the city. "A great rolling sea of evil," he said, almost proprietorially. "Shallower in some places, of course, but deeper, oh, so much deeper in others. But people like you put together little rafts of rules and vaguely good intentions and say, this is the opposite. This will triumph in the end. Amazing." He slapped Vimes good-naturedly on the back. "Down there," he said, "are people who will follow any dragon, worship any god, ignore any iniquity. All have a kind of humdrum, everyday badness. Not the really high creative loathsomeness of the great sinners, but a sort of mass-produced darkness of the soul. Sin, you might say, without a trace of originality. They accept evil, not because they say yes, but because they don't say no. I'm sorry if this offends you," he added, patting the captain's shoulder, "but you fellows really need us." "Yes, sir," said Barnes quietly. "Oh, yes. We're the only ones who know how to make things work. You see, the only thing the good people are good at is overthrowing the bad people. And you're good at that, I'll grant you. But the trouble is that it's the only thing you're good at. One day it's the ringing of bells and the casting down of the evil tyrant. The next, it's everyone sitting around complaining that ever since the tyrant was overthrown, no one's been taking out the trash. Because the bad people know how to plan. It's part of the specification, you might say. Every evil tyrant has a plan to rule the world. The good people just don't seem to have the knack." "Maybe. But you're wrong about the rest," said Vimes. "It's just because people are afraid and alone." He paused. It sounded pretty hollow even to him. "They're just people," he said. "They're just doing what people do." "Sir," Lord Veterinary gave him a friendly smile. Of course. He said, "You have to believe that. I appreciate it. Otherwise, you'd go quite mad. I quite understand." He looked at his desk. "And now," he said, "there is such a lot to do, so you may go." I still think that Terry started diluting veterinary a lot towards the end. I think he was a bit more aggressive. I used to encourage him to get veterinary personally to kill Voice von Lidwig. I thought raising schemes is not that one going to be the third Voice von Lidwig book. It's going to be nothing raising taxes or crossing water. But I thought each time veterinary saves Lidwig because it's something else to do with the scene, I thought the third time veterinary would go, "Thank you, excellent service, now it's your time," and walk off. There's been an assassin, doesn't kill anyone. The plays. When Terry and I first started going to see the plays, we used to go quite often when they first got picked up, because for both of us it was quite novel to see another group staging them. And the scene in The Weird Sisters, Macbeth, which for us was our litmus paper for how well the group had staged it, was the scene between the Duke and the Sergeant, where the Duke has sent the Sergeant to go to bring a witch in chains, and he has come back. This is that scene. "She did what?" said the Duke. The Sergeant stared fixedly at an area a few inches to the right of the Duke's chair. "She gave me a cup of tea, sir," he said. "And what about your men?" "Well, she gave them what too, sir." The Duke rose from his chair and put his arms around the Sergeant's rusting chainmail shoulder. He was in a bad mood. He had spent half the night washing his hands. He kept thinking that something was whispering in his ear. His breakfast oatmeal had been served up too salty and roasted with an apple in it, and the cook had hysterics in the kitchen. You could tell the Duke was extremely annoyed. He was polite. The Duke was the kind of man who becomes more and more agreeable as his temper drains away, until the point is reached where the words, "Thank you so much," have the cutting edge of ability. "Sergeant," he said, walking the man slowly across the floor. "Sir, I'm not sure I made your orders clear, Sergeant," said the Duke, in snaky tones. "Sir, I mean, it is possible I may have confused you. I meant to say, bring me a witch, in chains, if necessary. But perhaps what I really said was, go and have a cup of tea. Was this, in fact, the case?" The sergeant wrinkled his forehead. Sarcasm had not hitherto entered his life. His experience of people being annoyed with him generally involved shouting and occasional bits of wood. "No, sir," he said. "I wonder, then, why you did not in fact do this thing that I asked." "Sir?" "I expect she said some magic words, did she? I've heard about witches," said the Duke, who had spent the night before reading until his bandaged hands shook so much, some of the more excitable words on subject. "I imagine she offered you visions of unearthly light. Did she show you," the Duke shuddered, "dark fascinations and forbidden raptures, the like of which mortal men should not even think of, and demonic secrets that took you to the depths of man's desires?" The Duke sat down and fanned himself with his handkerchief. "Are you all right, sir?" said the sergeant. "What? Oh, perfect. Only gone already. Don't change the subject, man," snapped the Duke, pulling himself together. "Admit it. She offered you hedonistic and licentious pleasures known only to those who dabbled in the carnal arts, didn't she?" The sergeant stood for attention and stared straight ahead. "No, sir," he said, in a manner of one speaking the truth, come on, man. "She offered me a bun." "A bun?" "Yes, sir. It had currants in it." The Duke sat absolutely still while he fought for internal peace. Finally, all he could manage was, "And what did you men do about this?" "They had bun too, sir." "All except young Roger, who isn't allowed fruit, sir, on account of his trouble." The Duke sagged back on the window seat and put his hand over his eyes. "I was born to rule down on the plains," he thought, "where it's all flat. There isn't all this weather and everything, and there are people who don't give you any dough. He's going to tell me what this Roger had." "He had a biscuit, sir." It goes on, but what we used to go by was whether the sergeant got the timing right. I was lucky when Terry came to see mine, my sergeant got his timing right, but sadly for me, when I explained to Terry how I wanted to get the timing right, he said, "Oh, yes, I could see him." I would go, "She did what?" "Well, she gave me a bun, sir." I could see him counting, his eyes were moving. But we got the time right. And we knew if somebody didn't get that time right in that scene, we would bring each other off to go to see one separately and go, "Abigail, the bun scene was awful." I love the bun scene. It's being a play, really, as we think of the plot, really. But sometimes you just have to. Right. Nice and cool down there. Let's give me a little bit of guards. Again, bar. Now, a black-robed figure scurried through the midnight streets, ducking from doorway to doorway, and reached a grim and forbidding portal. No mere doorway got that grim without effort, one felt. It looked as though the architect had been called in and given specific instructions. "We want something eldritch in dark oak," he'd been told. So he put the unpleasant gargoyle thing over the archway, give it a slam like the footfall of a giant, and make it clear to everyone, in fact, that this isn't the kind of door that goes ding-dong when you press the bell. The figure rapped a complex code on the dark woodwork. A tiny barred hatch opened, and one suspicious eye peered out. "The significant owl hoots in the night," said the visitor, trying to wring the rainwater out of its robe. "Yet many grey lords go sadly to the masterless men," intoned the voice on the other side of the grill. "Hooray, hooray for the spinster sister's daughter, counted the dripping figure. To the axeman, all supplicants are the same height. Yet verily the rose is within the thorn. The good mother makes bean soup for the errant boy, said the voice behind the door. There was a pause, broken only by the sound of the rain. Then the visitor said, "What? The good mother makes bean soup for the errant boy." There was another, longer pause, and the damp figure said, "Are you sure the ill-built tower has trembled mightily at the hurricane's passage?" "No, bean soup it is, I'm sorry." The rain hissed down relentlessly in the embarrassed silence. "What about the caged whale?" said the soaking visitor, trying to squeeze into what little shelter the dread portal offered. "What about it? It should know nothing of the mighty deeds if he must know." "Oh, the caged whale. You want the elucidated brethren of the Ebon Knight 3 doors down." "Who are you then?" "We're the illuminated and ancient brethren of E." "I thought you met over in Treacle Street," said the damp man after a while. "Yeah, well, you know how it is. The fretwork blew up the room Tuesdays. There was a bit of a mix-up." "Ah, well, thanks anyway." "My pleasure." The little door slammed shut. The rope figure glared at it for a moment and then splashed further down the street. There was, indeed, another portal there. The builder hadn't bothered to change the design much. He nodded. The little barred hatch shot back. "Yes? Look, the significant owl hoots in the night, all right? Yet many grey lords go sadly to be masterless men. Hooray, hooray for Spencer's sister's daughter, okay? To the axeman, all supplicants are the same height. Yet verily the rose is within the thorn. It's pissing down out here, you know that, don't you?" "Yes," said the voice in the tones of one who indeed does know it and is not the one standing in it. The visitor sighed. "The caged whale knows nothing of the mighty deeps," he said, "if it makes you any happier. The ill-built tower trembles vaguely in the butterfly's passage." The supplicant grabbed the bars of the window and pulled himself up to it and hissed, "Now let us in, I'm soaked." There was another damp pause. "These deeps, did you say mighty or nightly?" "Mighty, I said, mighty deeps, on account of it being, you know, deep. It's me, Brother Fingers." "It sounded like nightly to me," said the invisible doorkeeper cautiously. "Look, do you want the bloody book or not? I don't have to do this. I could be at home in bed." "You sure it was mighty?" "I know how deep the bloody deeps are, all right," said Brother Fingers urgently. "I knew how mighty they were when you were a perishing neophyte. Now will you open this door?" "Well, all right." There was the sound of bolts sliding back. Then the voice said, "Would you mind giving a bit of a push? The door of knowledge through which the untutored may not pass sticks something wicked in the damp." Brother Fingers, with his shoulder to it, forced his way through, gave Brother Doorkeeper a dirty look and hurried within. The others were waiting for him in the inner sanctum, standing around in the sheepish air of people not normally accustomed to wearing sinister hooded black robes. The Supreme Grand Master nodded at him. "Brother Fingers, isn't it?" "Yes, Supreme Grand Master." "Do you have that which you were sent to get?" Brother Fingers pulled a package under his robe. "Just where I said it would be, no problem." "Well done, Brother Fingers." "Thank you, Supreme Grand Master." The Supreme Grand Master rapped his gavel for attention. The group shuffled into some sort of circle. "I call to order the unique and supreme lodge of the elucidated brethren to order again," he intoned. "Is the door of knowledge sealed fast against heretics and noblest men?" "Stuck solid," said Brother Doorkeeper. "It's the devil. I'll bring one plane in next week, soon as all right, said the Supreme Grand Master testily. "Just a guess would have done. Is the triple circle well and truly traced? Art all here who art here? And it be well for a noblest man that he should not be here, for he would be taken from this place, and his gaskin slit, and his mules thrown to the four winds, and his welchet torn asunder with many hooks, and his figging placed upon a spike. Yes, what is it?" "Sorry, did you say elucidated brethren?" The Supreme Grand Master glared at the solitary figure with his hand up. "Yea, the elucidated brethren, guardian of the sacred..." Sorry, said the worried figure. "Wrong society, I'm afraid. Must have taken a wrong turning. I'll just be going, if you'll excuse me." and his figging placed upon a spike, replied the Supreme Grand Master pointedly. In the stage guards, on the Saturday night, the audience retreated to Terry Pratchett, being the man that noticed man had turned up. So he threw his robe back, and there was Terry Pratchett on the stage. And as those who've seen the films will know, not one of nature's great actors. He was very stressed backstage. He said, well, what might go wrong? And you can't go wrong, can you? Whatever you say is Terry Pratchett. It's just me. But it was good fun to just ring about it. Tried to get Wilkins to do it, but much easier to get a famous author like Terry Pratchett in the room than Rob Wilkins. So we started Terry's acting career like that, another first for us. I'm not sure I had a wine in the fridge after that. I'll do a bit from the beginning of They say that the prospect of being hanged in the morning concentrates a man's mind wonderfully. Unfortunately, what the mind inevitably concentrates on is that, in the morning, it is in a body that is going to be hanged. The man going to be hanged had been named Moist von Lipwig by doting unwise parents. But he was not going to be embarrassed today, insofar as that was still possible, by being hung under it. The world in general, and particularly on that bit of it known as the death warrant, it was Alfred Spanker. And he took a more positive approach to the situation and concentrated his mind on the prospect of not being hanged in the morning, and most particularly on the prospect of removing all the crumbling mortar from around a stone in his cell wall with a spoon. So far the work had taken him a week, and he reduced the spoon to something like a nail file. It was a large and heavy stone that was currently the object of his attentions, and at some point a huge staple had been hammered into it as an anchor for manacles. Moist sat down, facing the wall, gripped the iron ring in both hands, braced his legs against the stone from either side, and heaved. He managed to ease it away from the hole and peered inside. At the far end was another block. Just in front of it was a new spoon. It was shining. As he studied it, he heard a clapping behind him. He turned his head and saw several of the warders watching him through the bars. "Oh, well done, Mr. Spanker," said one of them. "Ron here owes me $5. I told him you were a sticker." "You set this up, did you, Mr. Wilkinson?" said Moist, weakly. "Oh, not us, sir. Lord Veterinary's orders. He insists that all condemned prisoners should be offered the prospect of freedom." "Freedom? There's a damn great stone through there." "Yeah, there is that, sir. Yes, there is that, said the warder. It's only the prospect, you see, not actual freedom as such. That'd be a bit daft, wouldn't it?" "I suppose so, yes," said Moist. "Some people might consider this cruel, Mr. Wilkinson." "Yes, sir, we asked him about that, but he said no, it wasn't. He said it provided healthy exercise, prevented moulding, and offered that greatest of all treasures, which is hope, sir. Now, I'd get some rest if I was you, sir, because we're hanging you in half an hour." "Don't I get any breakfast?" "Breakfast isn't until 7 o'clock, said the warder. "But I'll tell you what, I'll do you a bacon sandwich. Cross it to you, Mr. Spanker. Not finished, thank you." And now it was a few minutes before dawn, and it was him being led down the short corridor and out into the little room under the scaffold. In the room, the hinges were being carefully oiled by a man in a hood. He stopped when he saw the party arrive and said, "Good morning, Mr. Moist." He raised his hood helpfully. "It's me, sir, Daniel One-Drop Trooper. I am your executioner for today, sir. Don't you worry, sir. I've hanged dozens of people. We'll soon have you out here." "We'll serve you out in a black bag today. Will it help?" "Some people think it makes them look more dashing, sir, and it stops that pop-eyed look." "Oh, would you mind signing the rope beforehand? I mean, I won't have a chance to ask you afterwards, eh?" "Signing the rope? Yes, sir," said the "It's sort of tradition. There's a lot of people out there who collect rope. Bit strange, but it takes all sorts, eh? Worth more signed, of course." He flourished the length of stack rope. one signature every couple of inches. Straightforward signature, no dedication needed. Worth money to me, I'd be very grateful. So grateful you wouldn't hang me, said Moist. This got an appreciative laugh. Oh, well done, sir. That's my pension plan you're signing there. Now, are you ready, sir? Everyone? Not me, said Moist, quickly, to another round of general amusement. You're a car, Mr. Spangler, said Mr. Wilkinson. It won't be the same without you around, that's the truth. Well, not for me at any rate, said Moist. This was, once again, treated with like rapier wit, Moist sighed. Do you really think this deters crime, Mr. Trooper? He said. Well, I've never seen someone up here more than once, sir. Should we go? There was a stir when they climbed up into the chilly morning air, followed by a few boos and even some applause. Nice crack turned out today, sir, said Mr. Trooper, tossing into the room over a beam and busying himself with the knots. Looks like a lot of people want to see you dead, sir. Moist was aware of a black coat drawn at the rear of the crowd. There was no coat of arms on the door, unless you were in on the secret, which was that Lord Veterinari's coat of arms featured a sable shield, black on black. What? He said in response to a note. I asked if you have any last words, Mr. Spangler, said the hangman. It's customary. I wondered if you might have thought of any. I wasn't actually expecting to die. A good one, sir. We'll go with that, shall we? Moist narrowed his eyes. The curtain on the coach window had twitched. The coach door had opened. Hope, that greatest of all treasures, ventured a little glitter. Oh. That third hand of his telescope. No, they're not my actual last words, he said. Let me think. A slight, clerk-like figure had descended from the coach. It's not as bad a thing I do now as... Down below, the clerk was having difficulty getting through the press of people. Do you mind speeding up a bit, Mr. Spangler, said the hangman? Fair's fair, eh? I want to get it right, said Moist haughtily, watching the clerk negotiate his way around a large trough. Yeah, but there is a limit, sir, said the hangman, annoyed at this breach of etiquette. Otherwise, you could go on for days. Short and sweet, sir, that's the style. Right, said Moist. Oh, look, you see the man there, waving at you? The hangman glanced down at the clerk, who struggled to the front of the crowd. I bring a message from Lord Veterinari, the man shouted. Right, said Moist. He says, get on with it, it's long past dawn, said the clerk. Elucidated brethren and their wicked knock remind me of one of the little examples of the fact that Terry and I shared a sort of common pool of comedy and what we found funny. When I told Terry that we'd done Porterhouse Blue, I told him that I'd used the scene that Malcolm Bradley wrote the TV version, which isn't in the book, which is where the new master goes to this college in Cambridge, and there's a long dialogue in Latin where this battles door is slammed in his face. We both thought that was very funny. We both thought it was the best bits in it. We realised that we actually have very similar grounding in comedy. We like that kind of stuff, which is why later on he has a ceremony of the keys in Ankh-Morpork. Which again, we like that kind of stuff, that kind of nonsensical British tradition stuff. That's even more ridiculous when you read right. Thank you everyone.